The great council chamber floated in the darkness of space, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. Inside, creatures from 47 different worlds sat in rows of seats that curved around a central platform. Some had scales, others had fur, some breathed oxygen, others needed different gases to stay alive. But they all shared one thing today: fear. Ambassador Zethkara stood at the center platform, her tall, thin body shaking as she spoke. Her skin was pale white and seemed to glow from within. Two large black eyes looked out at the gathered crowd, as she delivered what everyone knew would be their final message for help. "We have tried everything," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive room through translation devices. For 3 years, the Kreks have moved through our space like a plague. They destroy everything in their path. 73 worlds have fallen to them. Billions of our people are dead. The chamber was so quiet that the only sound was the soft hum of the air recycling systems. Every being present knew the terrible truth: they were losing this war, and losing it badly. Zethkara touched a control panel, and images appeared in the air above the platform. The holographic displays showed system after system, each one marked with a red symbol that meant destroyed. The red marks spread across the star map like drops of blood. "The Kreks ships are unlike anything we have ever faced," she continued. "When we shoot them with energy weapons, they grow mirror-like armor that reflects our shots back at us. When we fire solid projectiles, they develop thick plating that stops our attacks. They learn from every battle and become stronger." A creature that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch-like arms. "What about the poison gases we used at the Vega colonies?" "They adapted to those too," Zethkara replied, her voice growing quieter. "Within hours, they had developed filters that made our chemical weapons useless. We estimate they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. After that, ... She did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what would happen. The Kreks would consume the heart of galactic civilization, and trillions more would die. Commander Veltar of the Defense Forces stood up from his seat. His body was made of what looked like living crystal, and light moved through him in slow waves as he spoke. "We have contacted every military force in known space. Every fleet, every army, every group of fighters willing to help. Nothing has worked. The Kreks are too strong, too adaptable." "Then we are finished," said a voice from the back of the chamber. Belonged to one of the fish-like Aquarians, whose homeworld was directly in the path of the Kreks' advance. "There is nothing left to try." The chamber filled with the sounds of despair. Some beings wept, others made clicking or humming noises that meant sadness in their languages. Many simply sat in silence, staring at the red marks on the star map that showed their approaching doom. But then, Dr. Nixera stood up slowly from her seat near the front. She was small compared to most of the other beings, with 6 eyes arranged around her round head and skin that changed colors as she thought. As the Council's chief scientist for studying ancient civilizations, she rarely spoke at military meetings. "There might be one option we have not considered," she said quietly. The chamber grew silent again. Zethkara looked down at her with hope in her large black eyes. "What option, Doctor?" Dr. Nixara touched her own control panel, and the star map changed. Now it showed a region of space that was colored dark red, with warning symbols floating around it. Most beings in the chamber had never seen this part of the galaxy displayed in detail before. "The dark sector," she said. 3,000 light-years from here, in a region of space we have always considered too dangerous for civilized life." Commander Veltar's crystal body flashed with angry red light. "Doctor, that region is a death trap. Radiation levels alone would kill most species in days. The gravity fields are unstable, the solar activity is extreme, and the asteroid impacts are constant. No intelligent life could survive there." "That is what we have always believed," Dr. Nixera agreed. "But in my research into ancient texts and legends, I have found stories. Tales told by the few exploration ships that have returned from the edges of that region. They speak of a world called Sol 3, third planet from a yellow star." She touched her controls again, and the image zoomed in on a small blue and green world orbiting a medium-sized star. The planet looked beautiful from space, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown continents, according to the stories. This world is inhabited by a species that calls itself human. The old texts describe them as warriors, unlike any others in the galaxy. They supposedly developed on a world so hostile that it shaped them into perfect fighters. The chamber erupted in noise as dozens of beings began talking at once. Some laughed, others argued, and many simply made sounds of disbelief. Myths, declared Commander Veltar.
Oh.
Stories told by frightened explorers who saw things in the dark. No species could evolve intelligence on a world in the dark sector. The environmental pressures would prevent any complex life from developing, perhaps, said Dr. Nixara. But consider this. If such a species did exist, if they had survived in conditions that would kill us, what would that make them? She let the question hang in the air for a moment before continuing. The legends say that humans do not just fight wars, they transform them. They use strategies that no civilized species would consider. They adapt faster than any enemy can respond, and they never ever give up. Zethkara stared at the image of the small blue world. Even if these humans exist, why would they help us? They do not know us. This is not their war. Because, said Dr. Nixara, according to every story I have found, humans cannot ignore suffering. They have something the old texts call compassion, a need to help others even when it costs them greatly. If we can reach them, if we can explain what is happening, they will come. The argument that followed lasted for hours. Some beings called the idea foolish, others said it was their only hope. The military leaders did not want to waste resources on fairy tales, while the scientists argued that even myths sometimes contained truth. Finally, as the debate continued and the red marks on the star map grew larger with each new report of Krek's attacks, Zethkara called for silence. "We are dying," she said simply. "Our fleets are broken, our weapons are useless, and our time is running out. If there is even the smallest chance that these humans exist, we must try to find them." Commander Veltarez's crystal body dimmed with defeat, and if they do not exist, if we send ships to the dark sector and they never return, then we die fighting. Instead of waiting, Zethkara replied, "Is that not better than simply sitting here while the Kreks consume everything we have built?" The vote was close, but it passed. 3 ships would be sent to the dark sector, carrying the fastest engines and strongest shields the galaxy could build. They would search for the mythical world called Salthri and the warrior species called humans. As the council chamber began to empty, Dr. Nixara remained behind, staring at the image of the blue and green world. She whispered a prayer in her ancient language, asking the universe to let the stories be true, far away. Beyond the edge of known space, the small world continued its orbit around its yellow star. Its inhabitants had no idea that their galaxy was dying, or that desperate aliens were coming to ask for their help. The humans of Earth were about to discover they were not alone in the universe. And the universe was about to discover what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world could create. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the impossible happened. He stood on the bridge of the UNS Liberty, a patrol ship that was 3 days out from Earth on a routine mission to check the outer system sensors. The coffee was still hot in his hands when Lieutenant Amy Rogers turned around from her station with eyes wide with shock. "Captain, we have a contact," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It's not in our database." Jake set down his coffee and walked over to look at her screen. What he saw there made him blink twice to make sure he was not dreaming. A ship hung in space about 50,000 kilometers away, but it looked like nothing humans had ever built. Instead of the straight lines and sharp angles of human ships, this vessel curved and flowed like something that had grown instead of being constructed. "How big is it?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm, even though his heart was beating fast. "About 200 meters long," replied Lieutenant Tom Brady from the sensor station. "But Captain, the materials are not showing up right on our scans. It's like the ship is made of something we have never seen before." Before Jake could respond, the communications panel started beeping with an incoming signal. Amy pressed a few buttons, and suddenly the bridge filled with sounds unlike anything any of them had ever heard. It was musical, but also mechanical, with patterns that seemed to shift and change as they listened. "It's trying to communicate," Amy said, her fingers flying over her controls. "The computer is picking up mathematical sequences in the signal. Wait, it's learning our language somehow. The patterns are becoming more familiar. Strange sounds." Continued for several minutes, while the crew watched in amazement. Slowly, the alien noises began to sound more like human speech. Finally, a voice came through the speakers, still musical, but now speaking words they could understand. "Greetings, inhabitants of Sol 3, the voice said. "Come in peace, seeking audience with your leaders. Request permission to approach your vessel." Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. Humanity had wondered about alien life for centuries, and now it was asking permission to come aboard their ship. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations ship Liberty," he said into his microphone. "We grant you permission to approach, but we will need to contact our superiors before we can allow you to board. We understand your caution." The alien voice replied. "We will wait while you consult with your authorities, but please know that time is precious. Many lives depend on the success of our mission." While Amy sent an emergency message back to Earth Command, Jake watched the alien ship slowly move closer. As it approached, he could see that what he had thought was metal was actually something that looked almost alive. The surface of the ship rippled and changed color as he watched, and he could swear he saw what looked like veins or channels running through the hull. 6 hours later, after frantic communications with Earth and emergency meetings at the highest levels of government, Jake received permission to allow the aliens aboard. The alien ship extended what looked like a tube toward the Liberty, and the two vessels connected with a soft sound that seemed to vibrate through the entire ship. 3 beings stepped through the airlock, and Jake had to work hard not to stare. The leader was tall and thin, with pale white skin that seemed to glow with its own light. Her face was almost human, but stretched longer, with 2 large black eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Behind her came 2 other creatures that were clearly from different species, one that looked like it was made of living crystal, and another that had 6 eyes and skin that changed colors as Jake watched. "I am Ambassador Zethkara of the Valonian Republic," the tall being said, her voice now coming from a small device on her chest rather than through the ship's speakers. "These are Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Defense Force and Dr. Nixara, our chief xenobiologist." Jake shook hands with each of them, noting that Zethkara's skin was warm, while Veltar's crystal hand was cold and hard. Dr. Nixara's skin felt strangely soft and seemed to pulse under his touch. "Welcome aboard the Liberty," Jake said. "I have to admit, this is a first for us. We have never met anyone from another world before." The 3 aliens looked at each other with what Jake thought might be surprise. Dr. Nixara's skin shifted to a deep blue color as she spoke. "You have never encountered other spacefaring species?" she asked. "But your world is so close to several major trade routes." "Trade routes?" asked Lieutenant Rogers, who had been listening to every word. "We did not know there were any." Commander Veltar stepped forward, his crystal body flashing with different colors. "Perhaps we should explain. Your world sits in what we call the Dark Sector, a region of space that most civilized species avoid. We assumed any life here would be primitive or extinct." Jake led them to the conference room, where he had gathered his senior officers. As they sat around the table, the aliens began to tell them about the galaxy beyond Earth's small corner of space. They spoke of hundreds of worlds, thousands of species and civilizations that had existed for millions of years. "Your galaxy is much more crowded than we thought," said Dr. Lisa Warren, the ship's science officer. "Why have you never contacted us before?" Ambassador Zethkara looked uncomfortable as she answered. "Your region of space is classified as extremely hazardous. The radiation levels, gravity fluctuations, and stellar activity make it almost impossible for most ships to operate safely. We have lost several exploration vessels that tried to enter the Dark Sector. But we live here just fine," said Jake. "Earth is a perfectly normal world as far as we are concerned." Dr. Nixara's skin turned a bright yellow, which Jake was beginning to realize meant excitement. That is exactly why we are here. Your world is what we classify as a Class 12 death world. According to our science, complex intelligent life should not be able to evolve on such a planet. Death world? Lieutenant Warren leaned forward. What do you mean? Your electromagnetic storms would fry the nervous systems of most species, explained Commander Veltar. Your seismic activity would make permanent settlements impossible for anyone from our worlds. The radiation from your star, combined with your weak magnetic field, creates an environment that should prevent any complex life from developing. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying our world is more dangerous than normal planets? Dangerous is not a strong enough word, said Ambassador Zethkara. Your world has weather patterns that could level our cities. Your oceans contain levels of salt that would poison most species. Your atmosphere has oxygen concentrations that would be toxic to many of us. Your gravity is so strong that most beings would be crushed just trying to walk on your surface. The room fell silent as the humans tried to process what they were hearing. Everything that seemed normal to them, thunderstorms, earthquakes, ocean waves, even the air they breathed, was apparently deadly to most life in the galaxy. The world is so dangerous, asked Jake slowly, why are you here? Ambassador Zethkara stood up and activated a device that projected images into the air above the table. The humans gasped as they saw the destruction the Krex had caused. Entire star systems consumed, billions of beings dead, fleets of ships torn apart. We are dying, she said simply. An enemy called the Krex is destroying our galaxy, and we cannot stop them. They adapt to every weapon we use, counter every strategy we develop. In 3 years of war, we have not won a single major battle. She turned to look directly at Jake. But you evolved on a world that has been trying to kill you for millions of years. You survived conditions that would destroy most species. We believe that if anyone can find a way to defeat the Krex, it would be humans. Dr. Warren shook her head. But we have never fought a space war. We barely have ships that can travel between planets. You have something more valuable than ships, said Dr. Nixera, her skin now cycling through different colors rapidly. It have minds shaped by constant adversity. Every day of your evolution, your world forced you to adapt, to find new solutions, to survive the impossible. That kind of thinking is exactly what we need. Commander Veltar's crystal body grew brighter. Most species in the galaxy have lived on peaceful worlds for so long that we have forgotten how to truly fight. We wage war according to rules and traditions. But you come from a place where the only rule is survival. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the same thought in all their eyes. Humanity had just learned they were not alone in the universe. And the universe was asking for their help in a war against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. What exactly are you asking us to do? Jake said finally. Ambassador Zethkara's large black eyes seemed to look directly into his soul. We are asking you to do what your species does best. Find a way to win when winning should be impossible. We are asking you to teach us how to be the monsters that your world made you. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Outside the conference room windows, Earth looked peaceful and blue. But Jake was beginning to understand that their beautiful world had created something the galaxy had never seen before. Species that could thrive in conditions that would kill anyone. Else the question now was whether humanity would accept the challenge, what the galaxy would think of the monsters they had invited to help them. Admiral Sam Parker stood in the biggest meeting room at United Nations headquarters in New York, looking out at faces he had never expected to see in the same place. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists from every major nation on Earth sat around a massive table. At the center of the table, a holographic display showed the galaxy beyond their solar system. With red marks spreading across it like a disease, 3 days had passed since Captain Morrison's ship had made first contact with the aliens. 3 days since humanity learned they were not alone, and that the universe needed their help to survive. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Parker began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. We are here to decide whether Earth will enter a war that has already killed over 100 billion beings. The enemy, known as the Krex, has proven impossible to defeat using conventional methods. President Maria Santos of Brazil raised her hand. Admiral, we have been studying the data the aliens provided. These Krek ships seem to be alive somehow. How is that possible? Dr. Helen Martinez, who had been working with the alien scientists for the past 3 days, stood up to answer. She was a marine biologist who had suddenly become Earth's first expert on alien life forms. The Kreks are not just alive, they are a perfect fusion of biology and technology, she explained, touching a control that made the hologram change to show images of Krek's ships. Imagine if a whale could also be a battleship. Vessels are enormous organisms that have been engineered to fight and adapt. The room filled with quiet gasps as the images showed ships that looked like massive sea creatures floating through space. Some had tentacles that could grab other ships, others had shells that looked harder than any metal. When the Galactic forces shoot these ships with energy weapons, ships grow reflective skin that bounces the shots back, Dr. Martinez continued. When they use solid projectiles, the Kreks develop thick armor plating. They learn from every attack and become stronger. General Patricia Hayes, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward. Doctor, you make them sound invincible. How do we fight something that adapts to everything we do? Dr. Martinez smiled, but it was not a happy smile. That is exactly the right question, General. The key word is adapts. The Kreks can only change to counter things they have already experienced. They cannot prepare for attacks they have never seen before. She touched the controls again, and the display changed to show Earth. According to our new alien friends, we live on what they call a death world. Everything here is designed to kill. Us, the weather, the animals, the diseases, even the planet itself. But we survived. And more than that, we became the dominant species. Captain Morrison, who had been promoted and brought to Earth for the meeting, stood up. The aliens were amazed by some of the things we told them about Earth. They could not believe that we have animals that hunt other animals for food, or that our weather includes things like hurricanes and tornadoes that can destroy entire cities. Most species in the galaxy evolved on peaceful worlds, added Dr. Martinez. Their idea of a predator is something that might eat plants a little too aggressively. They have never faced anything like Earth's sharks or tigers or the billions of bacteria that are constantly trying to kill us. President Chen Wei of China spoke up. What does this mean for military strategy? Admiral Parker stepped forward again. It means, Mr. President, that everything we consider normal warfare is completely alien to them. They fight according to rules that have been developed over millions of years of civilized behavior. They try to minimize damage to civilian areas. They avoid using certain types of weapons, and they always give their enemies a chance to surrender. And we do not fight that way, said General Hayes quietly. No, we do not, Parker agreed. Earth's military history is full of tactics that would horrify these aliens. We have used biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons. We have deliberately targeted civilian populations. We have turned entire environments into weapons. Room grew very quiet as everyone considered what the Admiral was saying. Ambassador Zethkara, who had been sitting quietly in the corner with her 2 companions, finally spoke. Your species frightens us, she admitted, her voice soft through the translation device. In 3 days of studying your history, we have learned about wars where you killed millions of your own kind. You have weapons that could destroy your entire planet, and you have almost used them several times. Commander Veltar's crystal body flickered with nervous energy. Your entertainment media shows violence that would be considered horror beyond imagination on most worlds. Your children play games that simulate warfare and death. Even your sports often involve physical combat. Dr. Nixara, whose skin was cycling through worried purple colors, added, We asked for warriors, but we did not understand what that would mean. Your entire species has been shaped by violence and death in ways that no other known species has experienced. President Santos looked uncomfortable. You no longer want our help? Ambassador Zethkara was quiet for a long moment before answering. We are saying that we now understand why the stories called your people monsters. But we are also dying, and monsters may be exactly what we need. Admiral Parker nodded. The question is not whether we are monsters, but whether we are the right kind of monsters for this job. Dr. Martinez, please show them what our teams have been working on. Dr. Martinez touched her controls and the hologram changed to show designs for new types of weapons and ships. We have been studying the Krek's weaknesses. They adapt to direct attacks, but they cannot adapt to environmental changes. So we do not attack the ships, we attack the space around them. The images showed human ships equipped with devices that could destabilize gravity fields, create artificial solar flares, and even trigger explosions in empty space itself. We also discovered something interesting about their biology, Dr. Martinez continued. They are immune to most poisons and diseases, but only ones they have encountered before. Earth has billions of different toxic compounds and biological agents that simply do not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. General Hayes was beginning to smile. You want to poison them with things they have never seen before. Not just poison, said Dr. Martinez. Earth's ecosystem is based on constant warfare between different life forms. We have viruses that can rewrite DNA, bacteria that can eat through metal, and fungi that can grow in almost any environment. The Kreks have never faced anything like Earth's biological weapons. The alien representatives looked both fascinated and horrified as Dr. Martinez explained how Earth's military scientists were already developing new types of biological warfare, based on organisms that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. "Admiro," said Admiral Parker. Our tactical analysis suggests that the Kreks fight like most galactic species. They try to minimize their own losses and stick to predictable patterns. But humans do not fight that way. He activated another display that showed Earth's military history. We have a concept called acceptable losses. We are willing to sacrifice some of our own forces to achieve victory. We also use tactics like feints, ambushes, and psychological warfare that most species consider dishonorable. Captain Morrison stood up again. The aliens have been asking us about something they do not understand. They want to know why humans sometimes fight even when they know they cannot win. They do not have a concept for what we call fighting to the death. Commander Veltar's crystal body dimmed. Most species surrender when defeat becomes certain. It is logical to preserve life rather than waste it in hopeless battles. But humans seem to fight harder when the situation becomes desperate. That is because Earth taught us that giving up means dying, said General Hayes. On our world, the species that surrendered became extinct. Only the ones that kept fighting survived, long enough to evolve intelligence. The meeting continued for hours as Earth's leaders learned more about the Galactic War and the aliens. Learned more about human warfare. Plans were made to combine human tactics with alien technology. Earth's shipyards would begin producing vessels, designed for types of combat that no civilized species had ever considered. As the meeting ended, Ambassador Zethkara approached Admiral Parker privately. "Are you certain your people can defeat the Kreks?" she asked. Parker looked at her with eyes that had seen too many wars. "Ambassador, I cannot promise we will win. But I can promise you this. When the Kreks face humans in battle, they will encounter forms of warfare that their million years of evolution never prepared them for. They will learn what it means to fight a species that has spent its entire existence finding new ways to kill." The ambassador's large black eyes reflected fear and hope in equal measure. "Then let us hope that when this war is over, the galaxy will still have room for both monsters and civilized beings." Outside the meeting room windows, Earth continued its peaceful rotation around the sun. But in shipyards and laboratories around the world, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world had created. The universe had asked for help, and the monsters were getting ready to answer. Admiral Sam Parker stood on the bridge of the UNS Retribution, watching the stars ahead of them shift from white to blue as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 3 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic War, and this would be humanity's first major battle against the Kreks. The Kepler Nexus stretched out before them, a massive space station that connected 3 different star systems through artificial wormholes. For 2 years, the Nexus had been the most important trading hub in this part of the galaxy. Now it was about to become a battleground. "Admiral, we have contacts," called out Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from the sensor station. "Krek's ships are approaching from the outer system." "Count IS, My God, there are thousands of them. Parker nodded, calmly, and activated the communication system that connected him to the 100 human ships spread throughout the system. Behind him, alien observers from 12 different species watched everything with expressions ranging from hope to terror. All ships. This is Admiral Parker. Execute Operation Wildfire in 30 minutes. Remember, we are not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Commander Veltar, the crystal being who had become the alien liaison to the human fleet, stepped closer. To Parker, his body was flickering with nervous energy as he spoke. Admiral, the Krex force is massive. They have enough ships to destroy everything in this system twice over. Are you certain about this plan? Parker smiled, but his eyes remained cold. Commander, your people have been fighting the Krex for 3 years using the same tactics over and over. You attack their ships directly, they adapt, and you lose. We are going to try something different. On the main display, the Krex fleet looked like a moving cloud of death. Ships were all different sizes and shapes, but they shared the same organic appearance that made them look more like sea creatures than spacecraft. Some were as small as human fighters, others were larger than Earth's biggest cities. Sir, the Krex are maintaining their standard formation, reported Captain Ben Collins from the UNS Darwin. They are grouping together and moving as one unit, just like the intelligence reports said they would. Perfect, said Parker. That makes this easier. All ships, begin Phase 1. What happened next violated every rule of space combat that the galaxy had developed over millions of years. Instead of moving to engage the enemy, the human ships scattered in all directions, spreading out across the entire star system. Ambassador Zethkara, who was observing from the bridge, made a sound of confusion.
Admiral, your ships are running away from the enemy.
How will you fight them if you are not close enough to shoot? Who said anything about shooting them? Parker replied. Sullivan, target the asteroid belt in Sector 7. Collins, I want you to hit that gas cloud near the 4th planet. Rodriguez, start working on the star itself. The alien observers watched in growing horror as the human ships began attacking empty space. They shot kinetic projectiles at asteroids, causing massive explosions that sent debris flying in all directions. They fired energy weapons at pockets of gas, creating expanding spheres of superheated plasma. Most shocking of all, they began bombarding the system's star with specially designed missiles. You are destroying the entire system, gasped Dr. Nixara, her skin cycling through panicked red colors. The gravitational disruptions alone could kill millions of beings. Colonel Ben Phillips, Earth's chief tactical officer, turned to look at her with eyes that showed no emotion. That is the point, Doctor. The Krex adapt to weapons and ships. They cannot adapt to an entire star system that is trying to kill them. As the human ships continued their work, the space around the Kepler nexus became a death trap. Asteroid fragments created deadly debris fields that moved at incredible speeds. Gas clouds became fields of burning plasma that could melt any ship that touched them. Most terrifying of all, the star itself began to behave strangely as human weapons disrupted its magnetic field. The Krex fleet, which had been approaching in their standard formation, suddenly found themselves flying into a nightmare. Ships that could adapt to any weapon were helpless against chunks of rock moving at 50,000 kilometers per hour. Armor that could stop energy blasts was useless against clouds of superheated gas that surrounded them completely. Phase 1 complete, reported Captain Sullivan from the UN's Liberty. The Krex formation is breaking apart. They're trying to avoid the debris fields. Excellent, said Parker. Begin Phase 2. Launch the biological packages. This was the moment the alien observers had been dreading. For weeks, they had watched Earth scientists work with materials that no civilized species would ever consider using as weapons. Now those weapons were about to be used for the first time. Hundreds of small missiles launched from the human ships, each one containing biological agents that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. These were not simple poisons or diseases. They were Earth's most aggressive life forms, modified to survive in space and programmed to attack anything with organic components. Captain Sarah Mitchell, commanding the UN's Darwin, watched her missiles impact the closest Krex ships. Direct hits on targets Alpha through Delta. Biological agents are deploying. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The Krek ships, which were living creatures as much as they were machines, began to change as Earth's biological weapons attacked. Their hulls started to dissolve as specially designed bacteria ate through their organic armor. Viruses rewrote their DNA, causing their adaptive systems to malfunction. Fungi grew through their internal systems, clogging vital organs and disrupting their ability to think. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the mighty Krek swarm, which had been unstoppable for 3 years, began to fall apart from the inside. "How is this possible?" whispered Commander Veltar. "The Kreks have immunity to all known biological agents." Dr. Helen Martinez, who had designed many of the biological weapons, turned from her monitoring station with a grim smile. "They have immunity to all galactic biological agents, but they have never encountered Earth's ecosystem. Our planet has been engaged in biological warfare for 3 billion years. Every organism we used against them represents millions of years of evolution designed for one purpose: to kill other living things. The battle, if it could still be called a battle, continued for 6 hours. The Krek ships tried to adapt to the human attacks, but they were facing something completely outside their experience. How do you develop immunity to a virus that does not exist anywhere in your part of the galaxy? How do you defend against bacteria that have been specifically designed to eat the materials your body is made of?" As the larger Krek ships began to die, smaller vessels tried to escape back to their home territory. But the humans had prepared for this too. "Admiral, we have Krek ships attempting to retreat," reported Captain Collins. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," said Parker. "Let them go. But make sure they carry a little gift from Earth with them." The escaping Krek ships had no way of knowing that they were now infected with Earth's biological agents. As they fled back to their breeding worlds, they would carry humanity's weapons directly into the heart of Krek space. Ambassador Zethkara stared at the main display, where the remains of thousands of Krek ships drifted in the debris-filled space. Around the Nexus, in 6 hours, humanity had destroyed a force that had taken the galaxy 3 years to build. "How do you feel no guilt about this?" she asked Admiral Parker quietly. "You just killed millions of beings using methods that most species would consider evil." Parker looked at her with tired eyes. "Ambassador, evil is a luxury that dead species cannot afford. The Kreks have been killing your people for 3 years. Today, we stopped them. If that makes us monsters, then we are monsters in service of the innocent." Commander Veltar's crystal body had gone completely dim. "The galaxy will never be the same after this. You have introduced forms of warfare that no one will be able to forget." "Good," said Colonel Phillips. "Maybe next time someone will think twice before starting a war of extinction." Dr. Nixara approached Dr. Martinez with her skin showing deep blue confusion. "Doctor, I must ask, are there more weapons like these? More biological agents from your world?" Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. "Earth has millions of different toxic compounds, billions of aggressive organisms, and countless ways of killing that the galaxy has never seen. What we used today was just a small sample." The alien scientists looked at each other with expressions of awe and terror. They had asked for warriors, and humanity had given them something far more dangerous: an entire arsenal of weapons based on the most hostile ecosystem in known space. As the human fleet began to secure the Kepler Nexus, reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Their Krek's forces were retreating, their confidence shattered by news of the defeat. For the first time in 3 years, the red marks on the galactic map had stopped spreading. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The civilized galaxy had learned what happened when they invited the children of a death world to solve their problems, and in the dark spaces between the stars, the Kreks were beginning to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. They had adapted to fight every known form of life in the galaxy. But Earth was not known, and humanity was unlike anything that had ever existed before. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Nexus, President Claire Adams stood before the Galactic Council in what used to be the most important governing body in known space. The great crystal chamber still glowed with soft blue light, but everything else had changed. Half the seats were empty now, their former occupants either dead from the Krex War or missing entirely. The other half were filled with beings who looked at the human delegation with mixtures of gratitude, fear, and something that might have been respect. The war was over. The Krex threat had been eliminated completely, their breeding world sterilized. By biological weapons that had spread through their territory like wildfire, what remained of their empire was now under human control, being transformed into colonies for the species they had tried to destroy. But as President Adams looked around the chamber, she knew that ending the Krex War had only been the beginning of a much larger change. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices that every being in the chamber wore, "we gather today to discuss the future of our galaxy. The immediate threat has been eliminated, but we must decide what comes next." Ambassador Zethkara, who had aged visibly during the months of war, stood up from her seat near the front of the chamber. Her once glowing skin had become pale and dim, and her large black eyes held a sadness that had not been there before. "President Adams, humanity has fulfilled its promise to us. You saved our civilizations from extinction. We are grateful beyond words for what you have done." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was very quiet. "But we must also acknowledge that the galaxy has been changed forever by the methods you used to achieve victory." Murmurs filled the chamber as other representatives nodded in agreement. Commander Veltar, his crystal body flickering with nervous energy, stood to speak. "In 6 months of fighting, humanity introduced 47 new forms of warfare that had never been used in galactic conflicts. You poisoned entire star systems, used diseases as weapons, and turned the environment itself into a tool of destruction. The Krex are gone, but so are the rules that governed civilized behavior for millions of years." President Adams listened patiently to the concerns, but her expression remained calm. She had expected this conversation from the moment Earth decided to join the war. "Commander Veltar raises an important point," she said. "The methods we used were indeed different from traditional galactic warfare. But I would remind this council that traditional methods had failed completely. The Krex were winning, and they would have continued winning until every civilization in this galaxy was extinct." Dr. Nixara, her skin cycling through worried purple. Colors activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Instead of the red marks that had once shown Krex territory, there were now blue marks indicating human-controlled space. "President Adams, in the 6 months since the war ended, human colonies have been established in over 200 star systems. Your people are expanding at a rate that exceeds even the Krex at their peak. Many of our member species are concerned about what this means for their own territories." President Adams nodded. "Doctor, you are absolutely correct. Humanity is expanding rapidly through former Krex space. But we are not conquering, we are liberating. Every world we have claimed was either destroyed by the Krex or abandoned by species fleeing their advance. We are bringing life back to dead systems." She activated her own display, showing images of human colonies being built on worlds that had been left as barren rock by Krex feeding. "We are also offering partnership to any species that wishes to join us. 12 civilizations have already requested to become part of what we are calling the Terran Federation." The chamber erupted in worried sounds as representatives from different species began talking among themselves. The idea of joining a human-led government was both appealing and terrifying to many of them. General Patricia Hayes, who had been promoted to head of Human Galactic Forces, stood to address the concerns. "I understand that many of you are afraid of us. You have seen what humans are capable of when we fight. But you should also remember that we only fight when we are threatened or when innocent people need protection." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed peaceful human colonies with alien populations living and working alongside humans. "In every system we control, former enemies are now partners. We have Krex survivors working in our research facilities helping us understand their technology. We have refugees from dozens of species building new lives in our colonies." Ambassador Zethkara looked directly at President Adams. "What you say sounds reasonable, but many of us cannot forget what we witnessed during the war. Your species showed a capacity for violence that exceeded even the Krex. How can we trust that you will not turn those same weapons against us if we displease you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. President Adams was quiet for a long moment before she answered. Ambassador, I cannot give you the guarantee you want because it would be a lie. Humanity is indeed capable of great violence when we believe it is necessary. But we are also capable of great compassion when we believe people deserve protection. She activated another display, this one showing human medical ships providing aid to alien populations, human engineers rebuilding destroyed infrastructure, and human scientists sharing technology freely with other species. The same instincts that made us effective against the Kreks also make us protective of those who cannot protect themselves. Earth's history is full of violence, but it is also full of humans who sacrificed everything to help others, even people they had never met. Commander Veltar's crystal body began to glow more brightly. Are you saying that humanity will be the galaxy's protector now? I am saying that humanity will not allow another Kreks to happen, President Adams replied firmly. We will not permit any species to wage wars of extinction or to commit genocide. We will use whatever methods are necessary. To prevent such threats from arising, the chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Humanity was not just offering partnership. They were establishing themselves as the galaxy's ultimate authority on matters of war and peace. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's new Secretary of Alien Relations, stood to add to the President's statement. We understand that this is a difficult transition for everyone. The old Galactic Council governed through consensus and tradition. The Terran Federation will govern through strength and pragmatism. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. But we are not tyrants. Every species that joins us voluntarily will have a voice in our government. Every world that accepts our protection will maintain its own culture and customs. We are offering partnership, not slavery. Mouse-like creature from the squeaker. Republic raised one tiny paw. What happens to species that do not wish to join your federation? President Adams smiled, but it was not entirely a friendly expression. They are free to remain independent, as long as they do not threaten others. The galaxy is large enough for multiple forms of government, but ... double quotes. She paused for emphasis. Any species that attempts to follow the Kreks example will discover that. Humanity has many more weapons than the ones we used in the recent war. The threat was delivered politely, but everyone in the chamber understood its meaning. Humanity would tolerate independence, but not aggression. Over the following hours, the debate continued as species after species weighed their options. Some, like the Valonian Republic, chose to join the Terran Federation immediately, seeing the benefits of human protection and technology. Others, like the Hegemony Defense Force, decided to remain independent but agreed to mutual defense treaties with humanity. A few species announced their intention to retreat to remote parts of the galaxy, hoping to avoid human influence entirely. President Adams accepted these decisions gracefully, but made it clear that even the most distant worlds would be monitored for signs of aggressive behavior. By the end of the session, the old Galactic Council had been dissolved. In its place stood the Terran Federation, a new form of government that promised peace through strength and growth through adaptation. As the various delegates filed out of the chamber, Ambassador Zethkara approached President Adams privately. Do you have won everything? Have you not? She asked quietly. Not just the war, but control of the entire galaxy. President Adams looked out through the chamber's crystal walls at the stars beyond. Ambassador, we did not set out to conquer anyone. We came to help you fight the Kreks. But once we saw how the galaxy worked, how peaceful species could be destroyed by aggressive ones, while everyone else stood by and did nothing, we realized that someone needed to take responsibility. She turned to face the alien diplomat. Earth spent millions of years learning that the strong must protect the weak, or everyone dies. We are simply applying that lesson on a galactic scale. Zethka was quiet for a moment. And if humanity becomes corrupted by power, if you become the next threat that the galaxy needs protection from? President Adams nodded thoughtfully. And I suppose some other species from some other death world will emerge from the dark to stop us. That is how evolution works, Ambassador. The galaxy will always find a way to balance itself.